what we want to do today is to cut some dovetails on the electronic box joint jig from some scrap pieces. So, have fun! Okay, the very first thing that I did is whip the pieces to the same width, which we need actually for the calculation of our cutting positions. And the width is 129.18 millimeter, so around 129.3 on the other side. So let's say 129.25. Moreover, what we require is the thickness of the piece, and that is 14.5 millimeter. Okay, so after we have measured our pieces, now we want to calculate actually the dovetail positions, and so we enter our wood width here in this program which I have written for this purpose. So wood width 129.5, wood height 14.5, and on my saw blade, which I will use, which is a flathead saw blade, it has a width of 4.3 millimeters, and my jig is made for 10 degrees, for an angle of 10 degrees. So first of all, I decided to use for dovetails on this workpiece, so I add 4 dovetails here, and in principle I can now add here my dovetail positions totally freely. I'll take some arbitrary values. I can take also some different sizes, and not all combinations really are useful which you can enter here. You have to decide on your own, and to help you in doing this you can calculate this, and with this strange numbers which I added here, you would get these kind of dovetails, where this is actually much smaller than the others, and well, I wouldn't like it like this, so I want an equal distribution, so European style of dovetails. And to get this equal distribution, I have an Excel sheet here in which I can say that I have 4 dovetails, my wood width. I also type here one starting and ending length of, let's say, 10 millimeters, and the dovetail width should be also 10 millimeters. Then I end up actually with these start positions, but since I have chosen only 4 dovetails, only these 4 first entries do make some sense. So all the other values following here would be cuts at a position which is not in the wood any longer, as the wood is 129.5 millimeters width. But if you ever have a piece having more dovetails, then the other rows make some sense. So what I do now is actually I take my program and enter the start positions here. So 10, 43.17, 76.33, and 109.5, and all width should be 10. That's it already. I calculate it, and then I see what I get and can make up my mind whether I like it or not. So the dovetails exactly, so this is the side of the workpiece, here is the other side, and here my dovetail would pass by in the end, and you can see that we have here orange cuts, so an orange area which is taken out, that is documented here by the cut called dovetail piece straight cuts. So if I sort this table here by clicking on the top, I find here my cut types, and then I find dovetail piece straight cuts. Let's start position 0 with width 7.4 millimeter. This will take out this area till actually here, so somewhere ending up in the middle of the blue area and then the top at the orange one. So this is all done with the flathead saw blade, and will take out exactly to the depth of the dovetail here. So you have to take care that you set the right cutting depth. And same for this area and all the following. So with the starting positions here, so 22 will be here, and the width will be till here 18.05 millimeter, while and so on. So while the blue areas are the cuts dovetail piece bevel left. So we search for these here. Dovetail piece bevel left has a starting position of 3 millimeters and a width of 4.36 millimeters. So since my saw blade is 4.3 wide, I have to do 2 cuts, and one will be extremely shallow, and it will actually not really take out this blue area, because of course also here my flathead saw blade will tilt, and this is actually an area which I cannot reach with the saw blade. I have to chisel it out in the very end. Same for this area. This area here will not be reachable if I can tilt my saw blade only to the right, as it is usual on normal saws. So to be able to cut out also these parts, actually we have to turn around the complete workpiece in the jig, take it out, turn it around, and then do the third type of cuts, that is these blue areas. So same tilting angle for the blade. Cuts are called dovetail piece bevel right. So that is here. You see these are not sorted or invertly sorted now. So 0 to 7443 would be the very first. No, sorry. There. 3 to 4 at a width of 4.3 will be this cut, and so on, 36. So, and then we have all our cuts made on the dovetail piece. There is more, of course. We need also the pin side to be cut. For this we have the pin pieces here. These are all straight cuts, and we do cuts from left and cuts from right in the end. We don't have a visual representation of this here, but what I can show you is actually the principle of this. So the blue part here is my jig, which I put into my box joint jig, and the white part is the workpiece. And what we want to do is we want to cut out this area here, and the saw blade will cut in this way and has to move from here to here, and then this area is still not cut out. So again here we have to turn actually the jig and the workpiece in this case. So this part is then made to the right, the angel goes from down here to up here, so this blue box, and I put the piece in the other way around, and by that I can then actually remove also this part of the wood. So these are the two type of cuts to be done on the pin piece. So in the end we end up with 5 different types of cuts which we have to do to cut all the dovetails on the electronic box joint jig. To use the tool here, you can sort here by the different cut types, and of course by the start positions, but in principle it only makes sense to sort by the cut types, because you will set up your jig in one special way, and then you will do all the same cut types and all cuts of the same cut type. so that you do not have to, you will normally then take over all this data of one cut type into the Box Joint Jigs software there and control software. So okay, now the first thing we want to do is actually cut our pins. To cut the pins we actually have this extra jig here which we put to the electronic box joint jig, and it basically has this setup here. So the straight pin, so this is the back piece which comes to the front of the box joint jig. This is a 90 degrees angel, and there is one plate inside at the 10 degrees angel here. So on this jig we put into the box joint jig and put it here to the 0 position, exactly like this, and then we clamp it so that it moves when the box joint jig moves. Then we put in a scrap piece and 2 work pieces, and the important thing is that this line here and this here lines up, and also we have to clamp this. Clamping I usually perform by such a piece. Cross check. This is really touching the side. Put this here and clamp it with a clamp here to get the pressure here. Exactly works in this case. And I can take this simple clamp also because it cannot fall down into the saw blade. So cross check once again, that should be fine. And what is missing now is to enter all the data into the box joint jig. Okay, so the next part is now to enter the data. So what we are doing now is the pin piece straight cut from left. So we can go to the program menu, individual distribution, clear whatever we had before and add new values. So what we have now is 12.36. And a width of 9.848. 848. Enter 3. What we still have to do is to set our cutting position, and that is done in the very standard way. So you feel the teeth of the saw blade here, and this is as high as the thickness of your wood. That is fine. Other than that, we are at cutting position 0 already and can do our cuts. On changing the direction of the workpieces, it is important to ensure that they have the right direction in the jig, and by this the white pin side has to point towards the jig, because then only we cut the pins in the same direction as we had it before. So cross-check this before you clamp your workpieces. To set the zero position of my workpiece now for the dovetail sides, I have to set my workpiece, one now only, that should be sufficient, in such a way that the left side here of my saw blade tip is exactly at the side of my workpiece, and then I take a square piece and put it here as a reference and clamp it down. So now I can take my second workpiece, also put it here, cross check once again the zero position. Okay, so now we have this side of the saw blade as position 0 here, and both are at a reference point. Now I have to program the jig in the usual way with the data, and then we are still supposed to set the depth of the cut. So that the upper side of the saw blade's tip just is as high as my wood is thick. Should be okay. Since I have chosen symmetric dovetails in this case, it's quite easy to cut the second piece of tilted cuts, because my zero reference is still okay if I bring my jig back to position 0, and on the symmetric layout also the positions for the cuts with the bevel left, dovetail cuts bevel left, have the same dimension as dovetail cuts for bevel right. So, and you see, so my zero position is still okay, so it was quite easy to simply set the pieces the other way around into the jig, and I can then run my second round of cuts. So now we have our pins already. Obviously here are our 4 pins, and we only have to keep going to clean up the rest. For this we bring our saw blade back to 0 degrees. I programmed the jig now for the straight cutting positions. We shall not forget to check our cutting depth. This has to be slightly increased. Okay, hope that is fine. And now I have to set the 0 position newly. Okay, that looks good. So okay, now my zero position is set, and my second cut will exactly pass here, and that should just not touch my pin. Whoa! To finish the pieces up, now a final piece of a little bit of chiseling is required, because of course the lowermost part here where the pins go is not completely cut out, and there is no way to do this with a table saw. And we see how much more chiseling we need to really get a fit. Okay, after chiseling out, it's quite obvious that this side will fit together. Fit is quite okay. But on this side, obviously, the pins are too wide. Here is nearly a millimeter away, so the dovetail itself looks good, and obviously this piece was not clamped into the dovetail jig as required, so this might have not been optimally positioned. The same I also had on the other side, where I did some chiseling already, but I cannot see which it was. So okay, so I will mark this and then do some handwork here. So, final look onto the result. We see here the box joint jig was able to cut the dovetails in a quite good manner. There are some problems actually still with the software and the calculation, so I'm decided to optimize it in a little bit in the following way, that if once the cut is made here on these sides, the saw blade will not cut directly to this corner, because what I found as an issue is that when I was cutting here into this pin side, saw blade is actually cutting here and a little bit more here and then here, and then we touch this corner of this side, even though this should only be cut once we reclamp it on the different side and the cuts go this way. And that hopefully will make it easier to set the start and end positions right. Other than that, results are quite okay. So here actually this piece obviously was not clamped into the jig in a correct way, so I had to chisel away manually here, and in the end when I forced it together actually I got a crack here, so I will have to take it away from each another once again and take a little bit of material away from this pin so that this closes again, and it will not be obvious, or it will not be visible any longer with a little bit of glue. All the other joints look quite good. These gaps will close once it is glued down and clamped and by gluing. Same here and here. So that's quite okay. So if you want to build your own jig here, if you have your Box Joint Jig already available, then you can download the software which calculates the cut positions for dovetails from GitHub. The link I will include below. You have to build one more small jig which makes it possible to cut the pin sides at the angel, whatever you choose there. Once you have done both these things, then it should be no problem for you also to cut the dovetails on your table saw.